Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will, for next 1.5 hours, have another, I hope, interesting panel of Forum 2000 conference. The name Tahrir, Taksim, Sao Paulo is speaking for itself, and new generation in politics. These are topics we will deal with next few minutes. Let me start with a few ideas as a reflection of several panels of Forum 2000 yesterday. We can bring some highlights into our debate and some common point. I felt them, or at least understood them, yesterday. Dalai Lama highlighted that we entered 21st century, and this century can bring new generation with new idea after a really difficult, tough, and 20th century wars and bloodshed. Are we arriving to the change in terms of new century or not? That's the first question, I think. In several countries of very distinct and different region, we witness civic upheaval, demonstration, and just challenging of rulers and existing patterns of governance, mainly driven by desire to increase influence of people on the public issues, on the decision-making, etc. Few panelists yesterday, some of them being present here, stress that this is a change which brings to these countries politics bottom-up and replacing this traditional semi-dictatorship politics top-bottom. Does this, as we see it really in Tahrir, saw it in Taksim, in Sao Paulo, is it by accident, or do we see new, really global effort to bring citizens and civic effort into the public affairs? Because most of us could see it from very particular situation in each country, but if we look global picture, we really see something new coming. Third, last but not least, if it's global, if it brings these changes into really countries in different continents, do we see some role in new technologies, communications, exchange of view, possibility to really to see and understand people from different countries, nations, religions, and nations? We have a very distinct panelist, and for answering these new, I would say, millennium questions, I invited first Frédéric Michel is the representative of company, commercial sector, Telefónica O2, and Telefónica O2, together with Financial Times, organized and financed really interesting survey project covering 28 countries, exactly on attitudes of millennium generation aged 18-30, just trying to find what really this new generation thinks in terms of professional, civic, global ambition. And I would propose to you and panelists that we listen first to some results of this interesting survey, I think rather unique in our situation, and then we will go and debate the results from any sort of perspective of our panelists. Frédéric, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and Ivan, and thank you for having me here. It's I'm very honored to be here because Forum 2000 is an amazing conference program. My past is in politics, in policy, in media, now in the corporate sector, and I've studied a lot President Havel when I was in studying politics, of course, and I'm also very honored to be in such distinguished panelist. I feel very small compared to a very renowned activist and scholar, and William has his book here, which I knew of, so I think I'm not going to keep you too much from being able to engage with them. I think the opportunity here is to give you a sense of what we've done over the last few months, which is I run basically public engagement globally for Telefónica. I also run public affairs and comms in Europe, and what we've decided to do is to try to understand what we call the millennial generation and try to see across the world what was that generation's needs and concerns, because as we all know, that generation is now becoming really at the core of any political debate. It's becoming also, they are going to be the drivers, those 1830, of sort of any growth that can come out of most of the regions in the world. And what we try to do is basically go very deep into their perception. So we interviewed, we did the biggest survey ever done, which is 12,000 millennials across the world, answering 200 questions each themselves. When they didn't have the technology, we went to do it one-to-one, and we published it with the Financial Times. We launched it globally, and you have the supplements that we published here. We published 2 supplements, editorially, completely independently done by the FT. And it's been getting a lot of debates across the world, and I'm really glad that I'm able to share that with you, and I hope it'll be a nice introduction to the debate which follows. What I've tried to do here is try to highlight the results which can explain more the sort of economic, societal, technology factors that can explain civic unrest, that can sort of maybe explain part, or at least give some context as to why that generation is now representing a very active movement across the world, and how they perceive, first of all, how they perceive the economy and their place in society. Secondly, how they perceive government and their relationship with government. Their faith in others, and why there is a sort of collective voice that seems to appear. And fourthly, the role of technology in social media and others, which I hope will give you a good picture. Am I disturbing the screen, or am I well positioned? Am I hiding? No? Okay, that's good.
All of the above, I think.
Perfect. So basically, we've done it across the world, and those are the themes I'm going to go through. Economy and employment, perceptions of government, faith in self and others, and technology as the great connector. So basically, we found that overall, in all those 27 countries, millennials very much still want to succeed and have succeeding in their career as their main objective. And that's before being an entrepreneur, being famous, going into politics. There's still the sort of very much career focus. But there is an aspect of professional life that they're worried about, which is the progression between the work, the education and the work. So basically, the bridge, the sort of entry point that would allow them to become fully active in society. And when you look at some of the results, they're quite striking. Czech Republic is 91% saying it's difficult to progress to the workplace. Spain is at 80%. On top of their mind is the economy, and that's interesting. Across the world, economy is basically the most important issue. When you look at the results, of course, that differs when you look at Latin America, where it's much more social inequality, and Middle East, of course, where it's terrorism and political unrest. But notwithstanding the fact that for Latin America and Middle East, economy is still very strong and stays at 10%. So overall, economy is for that generation, which basically is going through a recession. And when you think about it, we talk a lot in Europe of broken generation that will go through unemployment as a core experience. This is very much what's on their mind. Few believe the economy is on the right track. That's quite interesting, because that is a very, very negative perception on whether or not the best days are ahead or behind, except in Asia, where they feel the global economy and their own economy is on the right track. And finally, in that context, they feel, of course, that the gap between rich and poor is expanding rather than shrinking. And when you look at the results, For example, in Germany, 77% of the millennials feel the gap is expanding, 70% in France, 71% in Korea. Now, given that background, normally when you're in recession or when you have in front of your mind such difficult time as a generation, you look to government. And you look to government for solution, and you look for institutions to help you go through this. And this is changing. And of course, this is now completely going through an upheaval. And when you look at the ones I've picked from perception of government, first of all, they mostly across the world believe government is not looking after the needs of its citizens. They feel government is looking after its own needs before them. And that's very worrying when you look at Latin America, 84%, 85% in Central and Eastern Europe. That's also one, of course, of the rationale for the different movements we've seen. They also feel governments underserve those in greatest need, i.e. there's not enough support to those most in need. And that's very high in Latin America, 71%. That survey was done before the Brazil event and the Sao Paulo demonstration. And it's pretty striking when you think about the debate there during those protests, which was very much about the lack of response, the corruption of the institutions, but also about the lack of connection between that generation and the political parties. I'm clicking as much as I can. Yes. In Europe, there's also globally, but they feel overall government has a negative impact on their lives. And when you look at the results globally, they also tell you about where the civic unrest took place. And I think that's quite interesting because it does demonstrate that they really have an aversion towards, more and more, towards the role that government is playing in their own life. Finally, in that section about the relationship with politicians, whether or not they feel, as a generation, that they can make a difference individually. So whether they feel, and we've talked a lot about grassroots movement in political campaigns in the States, we've talked about a lot, even yesterday in the conference, about the role of civic society or not, actually, and whether or not civic society is needed in order to make political change. And I think we're going to come to that in the discussion. Here, they less and less feel that one person's participation does make a difference, except when you look at Latin America and Central and Eastern Europe. That's the big difference. Latin America, they feel someone individual action can help, it can influence, whereas in Central and Eastern Europe, it's very pessimistic. Now, a third section I wanted to share with you is how do they feel as a generation? How do they feel towards each other? If they have such lack of faith in institutions and in governments, how do they feel as a generation between themselves, and how do they build that collective voice? I'm clicking like mad. And this is interesting. Do they feel they can make a global difference or a local difference? First of all, although they are very pessimistic about their relationship with government and institutions, they do feel they can make a difference locally. And so when you look at it, in North America, 82%, Latin America, 82%, Middle East and Africa, 67%. That's very striking. Locally, they feel, and we will probably discuss how that can happen and through what means and how does that define or not a new way of doing politics or of defining governance. But they really feel locally they're able to develop the tools and they're able to influence things. In terms of global difference, that's a really, really different picture. My interpretation, for what it's worth, is that I think globally they have a relationship through technology and they really feel they can affect things because technology, and William will have a view on that, whether they are connected to global issues, they get global sources, whether or not they can affect those events globally is a different matter. It's interesting to see, for example, in Latin America, 62% do believe they can make a global difference. Now I've got optimism, and I wanted to share that with you because it's all that amazing results. When you look at Latin America, pockets of optimism do exist. And think about Colombia or Peru, where economically, politically, it's not the most ideal situation at the moment. 73% of that generation is optimistic. And I think it might be one of our debates as well around why there's such a surge in entrepreneurship, why is there such a surge in youth actually wanting to act themselves within the political system or the economic life. And the picture is bleak, of course, if you compare it with Europe, where the generation of French people is 21% optimistic, or in Spain, 29%. Interestingly, when you look at South Africa, India 60%, South Africa 68%. So I think this is a very interesting global picture. Now, that generation is very progressive and is becoming more and more progressive, more and more accepting of others. And I think that's a big picture. When you look at open to others' religious beliefs, 76% say they are open towards other religions and beliefs outside their own. And it's quite across every region. Of course, you have the cultural dimension which comes into play. And then finally, one result which I've wanted to share with you, for example, they're willing to consider marrying outside of their faith. 80% say they would globally. 56% in Latin America. That's a big shift if you think 20, 30 years ago. And that's also demonstrate that generation is looking at ideals, at values and beliefs in a very different way. Now, the last section I wanted to share quickly is technology. That generation, as we've seen, is going through economic recession, is feeling quite lonely in terms of accessing the job market, has lack of belief in institution and government, and is also very much more able to recognize itself as a voice and knows its position much more in terms of its own neighbors and its own individuality. So what's the role of technology? We're going to come to that. And of course, social media here and the ability to express themselves freely is coming very strongly. And I've just highlighted 3-4 results, which I think will kick off the debate. First of all, of course, it's a smartphone generation. We all know that. When you look at the results, 76% own a smartphone, and we're only at the sort of birth of this. In terms of being connected, I think we'll have 2 more billion in the next 5 years. I think, are we at 3 billion, William, now, or 3 billion? 2.5. But when you look, it's across the region. I mean, it's incredible. Constantly connected, of course. I mean, 7 hours or 5 hours. I mean, still for me, 5 hours is a lot, and I feel guilty. But 7 hours is.
We are trying to cut our kids down.
This is very much the context. Now, do they feel technology has helped them to be better informed about political debate? They do. And it's in a really big majority. They really do feel they have access to information. They really do feel it helps them make their choice. And that's just across the piece. And then, of course, social media. Now, for me, that's one I wanted to highlight at the end, is in terms of political events, it's across the regions, even Western. And, we often describe that generation being quite apathic and me, and sort of not really caring about what they can do with social media. But even in Europe, saying that plays a role in current political issues, I think that's very interesting. Trying to click. Okay, well, that's the last one. Just to say, they feel basically that social media helps them lessen and contribute. Of course, in North America, that's very high. The only thing I would say is, I think the picture also around social media technology, there's a lot more in the survey. There's things around women in technology, for example, and the fact that the gender gap, it's still very much a very big issue. The ability of women to have access to technology, but also to succeed with technology. And then there's another picture, which is the ability of women to actually take part in political process and political activism through technology is appearing. And then you'll see there's other results if you look at it on privacy, security, other issues like this. But I just wanted to give you these ones just to contextualize the discussion.
Thank you, Frédéric, for brief, but I think very interesting findings. I hope Forum 2000 with Telefónica will help to make the data and results available in English as well and in Czech. I think they are already.
So we've put all the data available from the start of the launch, basically. So all the raw data is accessible to every academic, journalist, or on the website, and we've put the supplements up there for everyone to pick as well, so that they can explore it.
Okay, thank you. So now we go to our panelists and their feeling, which I would expect not always and not everywhere. They feel really global. And but anyway, the picture seems to me even over-optimistic, maybe. Let's start from the left side to the right one. Michael Ante is a journalist and blogger in various Chinese and English media, and he worked during the war as a reporter in Baghdad, and he studied at Cambridge, fellow at Harvard, and was awarded by Sanssouci Media Award. Michael, the floor is yours. No, it's just your reflection.
Okay. I think the picture in the survey just show the new generation really regard the social media and technology as a way of communication. I just want to tell you a very simple picture of China, where Chinese young people use the social media to give you endorsement of this survey. But first, just to repeat very small things like, Twitter has a 140 character limitation. I mean, one tweet only have 140 characters. But do you know in English that means letters? But 140 letters means 20 words, means one sentence plus a link. But Chinese character, 140 character, that really is character. It's like a story. So after calculation, that means one Chinese tweet is equal to 3.6 English tweets. Then by the very beginning, Chinese tweeting have the advantage to become, basically the Chinese tweeting for Chinese social media is not only a microblog. Basically, you can write a story in one tweet. So that's the reason when 2009, the first Chinese was popular, the social media was popular inside China, immediately this social media become personal media, because that's almost China lack of freedom of speech, but internet offer a new tool, new platform for everyone can have a personal media. That's the power come from. And also the numbers, because now the social media users, they have 300 million social media users. That's all entire population of the United States. They use the cell phone to tweeting in a Chinese way, because Twitter is blocked inside China, but they have the copycat inside China. Copycats. But also we have 600 million internet users as a whole. So 300 million users every day use the cell phone to tweet their story in 3 times information volume media, personal media. I think it's huge. It's really, yesterday I said civil society is a tiger without teeth, but this new social media gave the tiger without teeth the teeth, because now almost like every day have the media. That's the situation Chinese civil society want to utilize this new technology to promote the viability of the society, but at the same time, also the Chinese government think is a threat. Two reasons. First, these numbers really, really matters because they can create a huge pressure to the corrupted official. But at the same time, the Arab Spring stories frighten the government. They think they don't want to any other Beijing Spring happened in China. So that's the reason the new technology gave the energy to civil society, but the Chinese government also want to crack down this new technology. That kind of game every day is going, even today. Even today. Every day you read the Chinese news, every day happen. That's my first impression, but another thing, very short, is actually this new technology is really about communication. And this communication sometimes I seem like too flat, because it's only have, for example, if you have social media, you have a Twitter account, you have millions of followers, right? This communication is just you to user. I think the relationship is too flat. Sometimes, if the civil society really want to build up their structure based on this communication structure, only two level, right? Sometimes it's too flat for the organization themselves. Even in the past 4 years, Chinese civil society have a very good tools to promote the energy of the Chinese society. But the civil society per se in China is shrinking. It's shrinking. The communication tool is promote, is make a very big impact. But it look like everyone now have a PR, communication tool. Every organization now think social media is their biggest PR department, right? So the PR sometimes is more important than the organization itself. Because whatever you did, as long as you tweet out, only people will know. But if some action you didn't tweet out, nobody will know. So it's dangerous for civil society in some way, because you too much focus about the communication way, but you forgot some very basic action you do. And also, second wrong thing about the potential problem with this social media revolution is the server of any of the social media is in one place. Twitter is in California, right? Chinese social media is in Beijing. You just let the government very convenient way just control for all. Chinese government has a direct access to the Chinese social media. You have 300 million social media users, but I have the server. I just do some data mining. I can find any dissident I want, and any data. No matter, of course, you know the story, Snowden story about NSA that do the exactly same thing in the United States. So I want to say, social media really now is open a big window to us to show the new world. But sometimes, if only depend on social media, civil society will maybe has a dark side. Dark side is not about the populist. I think it's about the structure is too flat. It's too easy to be destroyed by government or by too many love for PR. It means influenced by the commercial society. That's, I think, from the Chinese side. Censorship is one side, but also the structure itself has some problem from the very beginning.
Michael, thank you. Can I ask additional question? How it is in China with, let's say, new or millennium generation, a new way of thinking or global perception? Is it reality or is it fragmented or how it looks?
Yes, Chinese, why the most circulated newspaper, daily newspaper in China It's very strange newspaper. It's the totally translation of foreign media. It's very strange. Maybe only in one case in the world that the most circulated newspaper in China is not about Chinese news. It's not about China newspaper. It's a totally translation of foreign media. Why? Because China didn't feel comfortable to see the world. He really want to know the whole world, what the whole world look at him, her. So that's is not confidence about that. So you should know what I'm doing now. So what American look at me, or the other Japan look at me. So that's the starting of Chinese internet users looking outside the world. They want to be normal, but they don't know what is normal, because we are abnormal for too long, for so long. So we need to find the new normal. That means we always look at the other example to show the legitimacy what is happening. For example, if something, even the Chinese government say, we do something wrong, we do some bad thing. He said, America did the same thing, right? So even the liberal society, to criticize government, we say, because the American did exactly the opposite thing, so you should follow the good thing. We are losing. We have no confidence. That's the way we look up the world. We really want to follow so-called the best example. Even when we do evil, we always to use America to justify ourselves. Because America is censored the internet, so we censor the internet is also right.
Thank you. Nadia Dhaif studied medical studies in Cairo, and then, as we all watched civic movement in Bahrain, got involved, and basically, probably deeply than we would expect. She was jailed, sentenced, tortured, sentenced for 15 years. In spite of that, she continues her effort. And so we are happy to have you here. I listened to your yesterday presentation. And how much do you feel in Bahrain really be part of global effort?
Well, in regards to Bahrain, actually I thought it's about the global movement, but yes, thank you to bring Bahrain. I think nobody cared. It's small, but really, I'll comment on Telefónica study. It really helped us a lot, and Twitter has brought us into seeing where we are not meant to be. This is a place that nobody wants people from the Gulf, specifically the Arab coming from the Gulf, to be seen, to be heard, and to know about the real story. But it can be a weapon, something useful. It can be a medicine, and it can be a weapon at the same time. And knowing that lots of activists, they were criminalized, they were jailed, they were targeted because of the use of social media in specific. All the revolutions, maybe I'll be very general if I say all of the revolutions are born and are the children of this social media. Either in Egypt it was the Facebook, to us in Bahrain, Yemen, Oman, Kuwait, there is some sort of struggle. It's Twitter, we're the kids of Twitter. But the two pictures that I want you to see here, there's a reality and the illusion. The reality is, okay, we have facts, we have things that's going on. And specifically, I will give example on the gender issue. On the gender issue, if you look at the Twitter accounts in each country, it will give you a clue what is going on and what's the mood in that country. If you look at Bahrain in particular, the top 10 accounts, they're all political. If you look on the other side, the top 10 accounts in Emirates, it's going to be like the entertainment, like the singers and actresses and actors and, you know, about movies. So that is the general mood. When it comes to gender, the top 10 accounts in my country, they all belong to women. But that tells you that women can win in election, that there is room for women in my part of the world. So this is the illusion here. It doesn't reflect the reality. There's no reality behind that. One of the things that I want to comment on what Michael said, it can be dangerous and not working in our favor for one reason. From our perspective, the activists, because of course the states, and we are as I mentioned, and I always say we are in police countries. So everything is under the state's control, the media, TV, newspapers, journals, everything. What we have is only this little window of social media to use. But we forgot somehow in the path to document something for the history, to leave that for the history. And we depended on the social media, which of course Twitter will give you, like it depends on the hashtag, how much it will hit, and it can say what, maximum to 2 months. Then where is that information? Where is the story gone? Yeah. It's gone. It's disappeared. Again, it's like the fast food. This is the fast knowledge that's given to us. I would, in this particularly, it served for the momentary. It's helping us momentary. But on the long way, it's like a conspiracy. I will go to the conspiracy theory. They don't want us to use the real tools. That we need to stop, think, and see in which way we can counter the effect of social media. It sometimes brings you false heroes. And if you want the wrong people to come in power, you just need to promote them, to give them the biggest number of followers. And it's like the role of media. When you want to create a star, make a star, you make a star, even if they're not talented, they don't have any base. Again, what is the solution? This is like maybe the new atom bomb that's coming, bringing down countries and bringing up countries and nations and changing the map, changing the history. This is a question I'm throwing. I don't know the answer of it. But more studies in that field will probably help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ahmed, Maher on my left side is one of those really founding fathers of Egyptian movement, civic movement. He is a Peace Nobel Prize nominee and chief coordinator of April 6 youth movement. And as he described yesterday, the way they develop Egyptian revolution by bringing up and later bringing down governments, and by this way just approaching this by circulation of elites, new and better thinking and more open political elite. And he said we can expect it's going to be more waves and more years of instability. I start to believe it's really the way things are developing, and it's a way which gives us certain longer perspective, and due to this, even more trust to what's going on in Egypt. Maybe, now I suppose it wasn't only me coming out with this feeling. However, Egypt definitely, by attention to the development in your country, became global. No doubt on that. Global in hope, global in certainly hesitation about the future development, but Egypt really, due to your movement, return back on a global generation and policy field and makes a history. So where are you going next?
Next, it's a very difficult question. Thank you, first of all. Yeah. I just want to agree with some points about the global movement or global activities. Yes, it's a global movement. The nation connecting each other now using social media and using internet. But also I agree with Nada about social media is not all of tools, is not everything, because the revolution in Egypt started because we have real reasons. We suffered from, there is no education, there is no jobs, there is no food, there is torture, there is no political life, there is no political parties, no one allowed to talk, to criticize the president, to criticize the government. So there's a lot of pressure, and we want to make a change. Our generation, Egypt deserves better life. Egypt have history, have resources. Before 1952, we have liberal time in Egypt and political parties and government. So what happened in Egypt now? There is no political life, there is no life. So we need to make a change. So we started to push for that and using the old strategies to make movements, secret movements, or try to hide from security, try to escape. But the pressure and the following from security push us for using new tools. We said, okay, let's using Google Groups, Yahoo Groups in 2005, 2004, and then forums, and then blogs, and then let's try Facebook, so calling for strikes. That's helped us to deliver our message. That's helped us to make our meetings in secret groups on Facebook, to send our message to the people, because if we want to spread brochures or flyers, so they will arrest us. So we used social media and internet to can connect each other, to can deliver our message. So it's a very important tool, and also this tool helped us to know about what happened in other countries, in Europe, for example, what happened in Eastern Europe, in Poland, Czech Republic, Serbia, because we have many rumors about our cooperation with Serbian guys and outward movement. So we know what happened in these countries, and we produced our experience and our methods to deal with politics. So it's very important tools about social media, and also the experience happened in Europe, in Middle East, in Latin America, in Asia. So the nations connect each other. The nation want to have real freedom and real justice, and they learn from the experience of many countries and also learn from mistakes. For our movement, for example, in Egypt, we learned also, and we start to read about what happened after the revolution in Eastern Europe. What happened, what is the transition periods remaining in Europe after the revolution in many countries? What is the obstacles? What is the mistakes to avoid in Egypt? And also now, there's many countries learning from us how to avoid the mistakes. So it's very important. That's about the past. About the future, now we are in very hard time in Egypt. So we have many positive points and negative points also. The positive points that the people now in Egypt, they can talk in politics. They can make a change. They can step down any government, any president. So it's very good. So we don't afraid from anything. There is a new generation. Before the revolution in 2005, 2006, we were just 200 persons in Egypt tried to make a revolution from 85 millions. And in 2010, we were about thousands. Now we are millions, can make a change, can organize demonstrations. But also from our mistakes, that, as another said, we depending on networking, mobilizing demonstrations, can tweet for demonstration, can encourage people to participate in revolution, but how to make institutions for politics, how to make a real political life, how to make a real political party. We need a time to learn that. We need a time to can deal with real politics and make a real change and have representative, have politicians from our generation. So it will take a time. So we need also to deal with real life, not only social media. But with the future, yes, there is many obstacles, and the debate now in Egypt about the civil state and religious states or military state, military ruling, deep states, peripheral regime, this very complicated issues and very sensitive issues. But we need to, going forward, we tried Muslim Brotherhood because before the revolution, many persons and parties worry from Muslim Brotherhood. What about if we step down Mubarak, Muslim Brotherhood will govern Egypt and they will kill people, they will Christians. We can't accept that. Okay, we tried Muslim Brotherhood and they did many mistakes and the people make a revolution against them again. Now we are again under the military ruling. So yes, it's we worry from many violations, but also we need to deal with that to support the idea of civil state, the state of law, human rights, dignity, social justice. Yes, we have many obstacles. The people from outside Egypt, they said Egypt is lost or there's a lot of violence in Egypt, but we are optimistic, as you mentioned, that yes, we will have a change and we need to cross these debates about religion, about military rule, about culture, about political life, political parties, and we will win. We are sure that we will win. If our generation didn't win, so the next generation will win. So I am not worried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. I think it's important to listen to it here in Prague because Arab Spring became a very important subject to domestic political debate here in Czech Republic, and I think even in the region, and really tough trust, tough mistrust, and some way I think we need more often to get it directly, not through our media. And but my question would be, how far this generation distinction in technologies, in political attitudes, etc., creates generation rupture inside the Egyptian society? Is it true or not? Does it go more politically, or is it more between generation?
I think, as I mentioned before, that to find a new tools to can deal with politics, we use social media to avoid security and find the places to have a meeting. So social media helped us to organize strikes before the revolution, to organizing many events, demonstrations, but also now sometimes it's helpful to spread news. Now I can follow what happened in Egypt now. I can deal with my groups in the Sex movement to think with them about what happened in Egypt, our decisions from here with using social media or using Facebook or Twitter to connect my colleagues. But also it's not enough to have real political life. So sometimes we need to using the old school tools or strategy to dealing with poor people in neighborhoods, to dealing with the people, to talk with them in Upper Egypt, in Sinai, in Matruh, and the places far from Cairo, because these places they don't use, they haven't computer. Sometimes they haven't electricity. So we need to talk with them face to face. to talk about politics, talk about hope, talk about you need to join political party, you need to vote, or something like that. So because the lack of information, or they get information from TV only, and sometimes it's controlled from the authorities. So we need to connect them, and it will take efforts and time, and it's not easy. So yes, we need to be in real life and to build using the old methods to deal with people.
By the way, do you tweet from Prague? Yeah? Did you send? Yeah, good. Okay. William Echikson asked me first if we met before that. And when I saw his CV, I understood why, because before becoming Google head of communication in public affairs, he worked as a journalist for Christian Science Monitor and Wall Street Journal, and covered the change in Central and Eastern Europe, as I understand. So probably we could meet. And from 2001 until 2007, managed as a Brussels bureau, Dow Jones office chief. William, what's your feeling about this, their generation?
No, it's interesting. It's their generation, not mine anymore. But it was very interesting hearing what Ahmed said about how they were 8 and then 1,000 and then 1,000,000. And I remember, and I think it's really appropriate that you're having this discussion here in Prague. The first time I visited Prague was, as you said, as a journalist. I was a young journalist for the Christian Science Monitor. We were about 6, 7 journalists from America who would bother to come to Prague because there was nothing happening in Prague, if you remember. There were only about 8 people that you could talk to, I think, in Prague at that time. I mean, there was Václav Havel and 7 others, or something like that. Otherwise, you got robots, frankly. But I think that was an instructive lesson. There was no internet then. I remember how I used to bring my Olivetti portable typewriter here and stay in the Yalta Hotel with more Secret Service agents than other paying customers. And if I wanted to file a story from here, I had to type it out, go to the telex post office and go behind and type my telex in. And my article, if I filed it Tuesday now, would appear, if I was lucky, I think I would have missed the Christian Science Monitor's deadline, so it would have been Thursday's paper, and that meant most people would have read it on Friday. So, I mean, we're going to talk about how the internet has changed that, accelerated that, obviously, but at the end of my experience, and the reason I brought, yes, I'm going to promote my book, but it's out of print, but it was the picture that I thought was most interesting, because this is 1989, November, here in Prague, and I assure you there was no internet. And it was almost impossible to get your story out here, and it was just a small elite that could report on it. Yet, a lot of people in the street, they went from 8 to 80 to 800 to Czechoslovakia, 8 million. It was 10 million then, but so obviously these social movements and the revolutions are driven not by the internet, per se. The internet is a tool that maybe facilitates, helps, but by deep-seated needs and changes. And I think all too often when we say the Facebook revolution or the Google revolution, even though now I work for Google, is not that's causing the revolution. There are deep-seated reasons. Now, at the same time, it is clear that everything you were talking about, the ability to connect, to distribute, to talk to the entire world so that people can't forget you that easily, is obviously true. Everyone, I mean, right now, anyone in this audience can push a button and their thoughts are visible throughout the entire world. And that is a fundamental revolution. And in the end, I think we do believe, that more information, and I remember one of the comments was about how you learned about these revolutions, or Serbia, by access to the internet, whereas previously it was difficult to find. I think that's true. You know, more information, more access to information is obviously eventually going to lead to better choices and more knowledge and more economic growth and more political, we believe, political freedom. But, you know, at the same time, I think this freedom, and from now I'm speaking in my present role at Google, is we're seeing around the world a true crackdown by governments. Here you have 3 representatives, 3 governments that, well, maybe Egypt, no, in the same sense, but where there is a reaction against the revolutions that we're talking about, and where often the reaction includes cracking down on the internet. And it is also in governments that fear these revolutions that are cracking down on the internet. I think Global Network Initiative, no, Open Network Initiative has studied this, and they studied 80 countries or so, and they found that in 44, there was increasing censorship, blockage, restrictions on the internet. Now, at Google, what we see, we operate in about 150 countries around the world, and at any one time, 17, 18, 19, the number changes, are blocking YouTube. There are other countries, Blogger, Maps, because people don't like the way we would name a certain region in a country, will be blocked also. And this is, you know, I think a mounting visible trend. And how do we see this? Why? Because governments are scared. I think when we're seeing the crackdown, we're seeing it in many ways. The internet was built from the bottom up. It was the people, it was the private business, and it was governments that all built this. And many governments now want to take full control over that internet. I was very involved in the last year in a battle over the International Telecommunications Union, where there was a proposal by Russia, China, and a conference held in Dubai, so Arab states as well, the princely countries who are scared of the internet. And the idea was to change this and use a UN agency to have government control over the internet. So that is one thing that worried us. There are other problems more directly here in Europe. So it isn't just the usual suspects. It isn't just you know, the Iran, North Korea, where we're talking about this crackdown. It is in places that are democracies. In Brazil, for example, our country, Google's country president, was recently detained over a video that we do consider as legitimate political speech, but under Brazilian law, was considered a criminal offense during the election campaign. In India, too, we have problems, the same thing. There's a lot of liability being put on web platforms to keep material that is difficult in many ways for off the internet, and to penalize them and scare the web platforms into basically building filters. And that same pressure we find here in Europe. I mean, tomorrow I'm going to Hamburg, where we're fighting a legal case against a well-known British racing ex-official, and he wants us to build what is a censorship machine. He wants a European court to order Google to block images that they're illegal images, but that would end up, in our opinion, blocking and bringing down lots of legitimate free speech. So, I mean, again, it isn't just Iran, North Korea, the usual suspects. These are issues that are really in the heart of democracies. And I mean, we can talk, in addition, the crackdown, I mean, is over government surveillance. I mean, the recent scandal does show that democracies are conducting significant amounts of surveillance. So what is Google trying to do to counter this force? One is transparency. We've published something called a transparency report. We update it every 6 months. It recounts how many content removals and how many requests for user information that we receive. And we're suing the American government to allow us to publish the figures that the secret services have requested from us as well. Another thing, and this is with Frédéric, is that we started something with a couple of other companies and NGOs called Global Network Initiative. And now we're to prevent companies from having a race to the bottom. I mean, this really started in China, where a company handed over emails of bloggers, dissidents, and they were sent to jail. And we said, well, if we keep on going, because we're all under increasing pressures from governments, that will go to the bottom. And so Microsoft, Yahoo, and Google, along with NGOs, started something called Global Network Initiatives to monitor how we do this, set common rules, and to also have independent audits on it. Recently, we've joined in a dialogue with the telcos because it was really the American Network Initiative, and we wanted to make this more of a global network initiative, and that really meant the telephone companies, which are often coming from a different background, but facing similar challenges, I would say. Now, I mean, these obviously aren't sufficient, but I think a recognition that governments around the world are unhappy with the freedom the internet has unleashed, and its democracies as well as non-democratic countries, that corporations, NGOs really share a lot of things to do together. Where does the Czech Republic stand in this? Actually, pretty good. I think the Czech Republic doesn't, in my opinion, has not received credit for, or not maybe stood up enough to ask for recognition. But I will note that the Czech Republic was a founder member of the Freedom Online Coalition, and that has really recently sent letters, for example, to the Vietnamese government to amend their censorship law and free bloggers who've been arrested there. So this is a coalition, I think, that stands up for freedom around the world, and it has made a big difference in places, as I described earlier, potential swing states, democracies that could go either way. And I think we're working here with my colleague Dennis to work with NGOs to produce a transparency report here in the Czech Republic, and the reception has been rather receptive. So when I look back and I say, I remember November 1989, and I know that a lot has come in between. It was cold. Overall, I would say in these 25 years, 24 years, that you should be pretty proud, because there is, at least from a glance, a real desire to promote internet freedom and to allow the type of discourse that is possible on the internet, to allow everyone to express themselves in a place where almost no one could before. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Frédéric, as you started, would you like to make some comments on other panelists before we give floor to the audience?
I was going to say floor.
Okay.
But I'm happy to. No, it was just my add just a view on everyone's. There's something around the lack of leadership in all these movements that I find there's no particular political leaders, which is very different from those times when you had the Václav Havel. And I don't know if it's true, but it seems that those movements sort of develop, grow, still exist, but there's still no political leadership. And I wonder whether or not that's what prevents them from being long-lasting, and being already sort of embedded. And the second thing was, it's interesting to see in Europe, we also have our movements. If you look at the UK in 2011, we had some riots suddenly, helped by, the social media, and they were wrong.
And it's very interesting to see the UK government's reaction to that, which was shut down BlackBerry.
Yeah.
But if you do that, how can you tell anyone else in the world that you shut down BlackBerry?
Exactly.
But I think that with all that equipment in hands of people, I think you can't stop water.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so now questions from the floor. Okay, we'll start here.
My name is Veronica. I'm a student of political science here at Charles University. My question would be on Mr. Michael Ante. I have to be honest, I was a little bit surprised by the information that you told that in China only there are like the Chinese news are actually the translated world news. And my question is it that because the people are used to that they're not getting information like around from China, or is there something like blog or Facebook page or something when you can concentrate it all your news from your country, so the people of China can get to know about the situation in whole China and not only like the foreign news from all these other countries like US, Japan and that stuff. So my question is there something like that when you can find all these problems of China and news of China, and if there is something like that, is it popular? And if there's nothing like that, do you think it would be useful or people would read it or contribute it to this? Thank you.
Actually, I'm not so understanding, but basically, just in general answer the question. Sometimes to report international affair is safer for a reporter in China, because if you report Chinese, for example, basically I got famous in China, inside China in 2000, because of my political blogger. It's a domestic political blogger, but removed by Microsoft. Then I decided that why not I just report international affair? So then I can write my columns on newspaper, nothing. I make a living on that. So sometimes you see strange things in China because there's a surviving skill. That's the only way you make a living or you have a decent life. Because if more and more journalists get arrested because they touch the domestic politics. So if you just keep your career from the very beginning to report the American election and the European banking crisis, you will have a very glorious career without any threat. Why not doing that, right? So I think that's the fact. Sometimes be professional is also a kind of feeling, avoiding the scare in your heart. Basically, it's also a kind of give up. So sometimes being professional, someone tell me, I just want to be a professional journalist, which means he doesn't want to touch any of the truth of China. But it's not happening in the world. Basically, you're a professional journalist means you can keep the balance between the ethic, the journalistic ethic, and the reality, which is good. But in China, that's the excuse, Sometimes it's very weird. Being professional is a surviving excuse.
Okay. That was a question.
Essentially a provocation to anyone who wants to pick it up on the panel. First of all, I think your metaphor, if you can't stop water running downhill, is right. In other words, this has started, it is going to continue. And I think all of you who are using it for constructive social purposes within the parameters that you've defined at this point in time are doing something completely remarkable for humanity, and congratulations to all of you in respect of it. So nothing that I'm now about to say detracts from that first value proposition. But I sometimes think that as we discuss these issues, we don't understand precisely how revolutionary they are. And they're not revolutionary for the reasons that have been talked about this afternoon. People right across Europe went out and had a revolution in 1848. There was certainly no internet. Student revolutions in 1968, there was certainly no internet. The whole of the, let's say, the rejection of the post-war generation, the Eisenhower generation, if you will, in respect of Haight-Ashbury, in respect of Carnaby Street, in respect of the whole hippie movement, which eventually spawned the student movement, no internet. 1989, in terms of the wave of Central and Eastern European revolutions, no internet. So you're using a tool in the same way that other tools were used for other purposes at different points in time, and self-evidently this tool gives you the ability to accelerate and to be able to organize protest much faster and probably much more efficiently than was ever possible before. But Ahmed put his finger on the point. That doesn't actually help in building institutions. It doesn't help in creating normative coherence. It doesn't help in creating new structures. It's just a mechanism that enables the proliferation of insight. And Nada touched on it in terms of this fear of false gods, if you will, in respect of it. In other words, you can promote it, you can do all sorts of things with it. Now let's think about the sort of issue that William has referred to, i.e. the pushback from governments. Of course governments are pushing back. You are disintermediating the entire political system that has been built up over the course of the past 250 years. The whole point about democracy in its institutional sense today is that it works on the basis of political parties aggregating interest around particular policies and then offering citizens representative platforms in order to be able to advance their interests, and then competing in elections in order to secure mandates for short periods of time, and then running the risk of being kicked out at the end of the day. So what is happening as a result of what we're doing right now is we are fundamentally transforming the way in which citizens express opinions in order to have impact on the way in which governance occurs. That is the fundamental disintermediation of the entire system, and it has enormous implications going forward, which I don't believe we've begun to think through.
Okay, good point. Who picks up? Yeah.
Exactly that what I was thinking of, and this is the problem what we have. We have the driven force, which is the youth, they have this hunger for change. But again, we have the old blood, which is the old army. They're existing on the floor, they are solid, they have this experience and power, where still we have on the other side, which is the keyboard heroes. And this is how to get over this, how to empower the youth, how to show them the know-how, and give them the experience needed to stand on a solid floor, again, the power. How is that doable and achievable? The civil society, as Ahmed said, we, of course, totally agree. We cannot build a society with the Twitter or with Facebook, which is a scary fact. When yesterday, one of the panels, when we were talking about the Arab Spring, the number of activists is decreasing in Egypt, whether in Egypt, whether in Libya. There was a lawyer from Libya and other Arab countries, including Bahrain, well, due to lots of factors, but again, sorry. No, that's okay. There are other factors, but again, because of we're not being realistic. The bigger title we have, we are fighting the solid old blood.
I don't talk about China, because China has no democracy. There is not such a theme we'll talk about inside China, but just talk about the world. I know it's exactly what you said, but the fact is, it happens. It just happened. And also, the very important institution to build up the representative democracy is media, right? But the media collapsed under the threat of the social media. You go to the United States, you say the New York Times, Washington Post just bought by the Amazon, the boss, right? What's the future about Washington Post? What's the future of New York Times? We don't know. We are just open a chaotic world, but that happens. That's very true. This social media is so people once trusted the politician to represent them once a year or once 4 years. That gave them the authority to deal with them things, and they trust them. They don't want care. But people now need representation now, anytime. They want to today, tomorrow, they also want. They want to participate in any of the process of the policy making. Sometimes for example, the senator in the United States, they should tweeting every day to his constitution. Otherwise, they were losing the vote. I think this action now, this very fast food communication, really also change the voting view. The people now tend to vote the young people who really want to report to them every single minute. That's the trend. Whatever the old structure is so good, so classic, but the fact is we are entering very chaotic world. But there is no political scientist now have a new theory how to settle this very big problem. Because if you're losing the trust to give the representative force a year, you basically are losing the Congress, the structure. We cannot report to the voters anytime, any minutes. That's wrong. But at the same time, the voters want the senator or the representative to report to them every minute. That's the very thing we cannot solve today. Maybe we can have a new solution in the coming years. But now we just open a very crazy fast food communication world.
Thank you. The next question was here.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is to Ahmed. The events unfolding in Egypt, you had the street, people's power in the street, then you had election, and now you have the military taking over with money from Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Where are the people? Has the revolution really, was it won, or do you think is it win-win, or it is loss now for the people? Where are we heading in Egypt? Thank you.
Where are the people and where is the revolution? We consider what happened in June 30 as a wave of revolution, because the beginning of that is the people will, not the people, the millions joined the streets against Morsi, because Morsi did many mistakes and fatal mistakes, and they keep the same regime and they keep strategy. So that's lead the people to make a revolution again, or a new wave against Morsi. Yes, in 3rd of July, the military take a power, and now they're controlling many issues, important issues in Egypt. But also, we are sure that the soul of revolution is still there. And the people caused or was inspiring, or there was like a spark of this revolution is still there. And they will defend the revolution demands. Yes, the people changed Morsi or Muslim Brotherhood after many mistakes from Muslim Brotherhood, and now we are in transitional regime again, and we are like starting from scratch, like what happened in 2011 with the military. We take a power after Mubarak, but also we will going forward to roadmap, constitution, and then elections, and then we will have a new president maybe after 1 year. So the same people, the same groups, the same network, the same activists, the same movements will stay to put the new regime or the new president in the right track. If we find the new regime after 1 year do the same, we will make a demonstration against him again. So maybe now the new president will be afraid from any violation or any criticism against him or any revolution against him. So it will lead for put Egypt in the right track. Yes, there is many violation now against human rights or arresting people or controlling the media, but also the human rights defenders and the persons support the idea of revolution before 2011 still there, and they're still watching, and they will defend the principles of revolution and dignity and human rights and equality. These ideas or these values, we will support it. So don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your attention and all of you.